And so, companies that do that, I mean, there's a ton of companies. I mean, P&G is amazing. The fact that P&G manages, a bunch of community. P&G is not a social media company in most people's minds, but if you dig in on what they're doing, they got it. They got it a long time ago. And they're way out in front, and I think that, some of what they're doing hasn't even started to pay dividends. And yet they are a huge media buyer. And so they've somehow managed to balance, here's stuff that has worked for us for 50 years, hundreds of years, I don't know, a long time. And at the same time, in the last 5 years, they've sort of tacked and done something different. So that's, I really am impressed every time you find an organization that can sort of move the whole ship around, particularly the big organizations. So a few others I like. I love Mozilla, just because it's a tiny organization that has a lot of people doing free stuff, if you want. In terms of investing, the gold standard for me is Sequoia. On the private equity side, you guys must know KKR, where I'll play favorites. Prime Media, I think, was
yes
one of the
not one of their better ones.
Not one of their better ones. But actually, I mean, that's actually interesting. So I'm gonna, the funny thing for KKR is that they're well known for barbarians at the gate, but they'll happily tell you, we're famous for making no money on that deal, right? So everyone's like, wow, these guys are fantastic, and yet they made their money because they learned how to be operators of businesses, not guys who are great at transactions. And I think someone like Sequoia is exactly that. I mean, they were, YouTube was 2 people, and they showed up and worked out of their office, and they incubated that into a great sale to Google. So anyway,
I would say it's a combination of both of what you said. I think it's when you recognize what companies do right, and that's cool. I mean, every week there is something that's cool, and it's a twist maybe on an idea that's already existed, but they're doing it a better way. I mean, I don't think there's no company that's perfect fully. It's companies that are willing to take risks, and as you said, recognize when they're wrong, which is a really difficult thing to do. People that can take data and utilize it in the right ways. I mean, data for the sake of data is useless. As a matter of fact, it can be quite dangerous. It can push you off in a direction where you think there's a correlation between 2 things and you're completely wrong.
That's never happened.
And that happens all the time in media. And that's actually one of the biggest things I think that's going to threaten digital media in the next 2 or 3 years is people get rooted in doing something the same way, think that there's a correlation between 2 things, say like click-through, and there's not. That might not be the best metric to benchmark yourself against for a specific campaign. And maybe it's branding, it could be something else. So companies that have the ability to do that, I definitely would admire.
So I dig lots of geeky companies, basically. I mean, the obvious ones like Google and Apple are obvious. They make pretty things and put them in the world and let people play with them. Google makes stuff and say, what do you go and do stuff with it? Apple make beautiful, beautiful things, and they just work. They have a property, I think it's called affordance, that tells you how to use it when you look at it, which is just magic, I think. And most of their ideas are stolen from Braun in the 70s, but it doesn't matter because they make them better. Design companies like IDEO, I think, are brilliant because they apply rigorous anthropological thinking to very obvious business problems and apply technology to fix them. There's a company called Stamen that I'm in love with because they make data visualizations that I'm just blown away by. It's the stuff that I'm really interested in, like visualization and mobile stuff. So it's a company called Foursquare, which is 2 geeks in New York that used to work for Dodgeball. They've set up this geolocation iPhone game thing, which is just, I think, could be potentially extraordinarily awesome. And other things like that, which like Mint.com, where they are building in, taking stuff which is dull and making it fun and pretty, basically is what I think is awesome. So banking is boring, finance is dull. Mint.com visualize your financial life and then give you points for saving and makes it into like a game. And so that's kind of amazing. So that kind of stuff is cool.
I just missed that. Wait a second. How are you using social aspects of the internet to further or enhance your business in a social media, or a social media fad? Let me say that again articulately this time. And I'll hold it across the room. Matt's question is, how are you using social aspects of the internet to further or enhance your business? Or is social media just a fad?
Oh.
The internet's a fad.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
Is it a fad? Can we throw that one back and say, I don't know what social media is?
I mean,
So,
I
yeah.
was going to say, I mean, the companies that I think do it most successfully are the ones that enable the conversation and don't choose or want to make themselves the center of the conversation, you know? Because really, who wants to talk about Ziploc bags? But maybe you want to talk about weight loss, you know, and maybe you can enable a conversation, you know, between two people who are trying to get to the same goal. And then maybe your brand comes up, or maybe it doesn't. And you also got to realize that, you know, you're taking a risk too, that people may talk badly about your product, and that's just something that you have to live with. I mean, it's better to be talked about if you're making a quality product than not. So, and I don't think it's a fad, but I don't think anyone's cracked it perfectly yet either.
Yeah, social media isn't a fad. It's fundamentally going to change the way the world talks to itself. And there's never been a point in history where people could say things and publish it to the world before, like 3 or 4 years ago. It's kind of completely awesome and fundamentally changes how power structures of everything will change. No, so not a fad, it's a big deal. How do I use it? Like, personally, I guess one of the most useful things for me is that my job is predicated on knowing more about geeky stuff than the rest of the people in my company, basically. And the only way I can do that is by accessing the thousands of brains who feed me information constantly via my blog and Twitter and Facebook and that. And that just ongoing, full-time, I can do that. And that's the only way I can do it. I couldn't keep up otherwise because everything moves too fast.
Talk about your Bloomberg screen.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I have I have 2 screens at work. One just has constant data feeds of Twitter and links and stuff coming from various sources. It's like watching a Bloomberg terminal. For me, it's just looking at the world and how it's changing in kind of real time. And a lot of it's like clients need to see stuff have already happened to understand how it can be used. And so until you can show them, you could do this with this thing, and that your competitor's just done something similar, which is a bit rubbish, but we could, you know, make it a lot better if you just let us try it, then that's kind of much more convincing than saying, I've seen people using the internet for this, and they're like, I don't care, I'll sell some stuff. I'm like, this will help, it just takes time.
But when you're talking to a client and they're giving you that deer in headlights stare about social media and why should I be doing it, or when they're going home and saying, I think I'm going to try to get a career doing this social media stuff, and their parents, you know, clutch their chest. How do you, like, and pretty quickly, what does it bring to the party? Why should somebody even be looking at a career going into this? Or for your clients, how do you explain to them why should they be doing anything in social media?
So, I mean, I think I don't know, I sort of think of it as a change in surface area. So basically, most of the operations were sort of a circle, and now you've got all these things sort of jutting out, and there's essentially more surface area. There's more contact with the world as an organization. So what does that get you? Well, if you're Dell, for example, and you're taking a beating because your batteries are overheating, a few years ago you got taken down, and your brand suffered, and your business suffered, because people were talking trash about you and basically telling people your product sucked, right? If you're a little bit smarter, you can go out and actually engage and sort of figure out, well, I do actually have a problem. It turns out that people who use my products figured it out before me. It's not the end of the world. I just need to fix it. And it seems like a small deal, but it makes a huge difference to that company. And so I think that, people are like, oh, active listening. It's like, companies don't know how to do this stuff. It's amazing. But it's very, very difficult to sort of say, I just heard something that is telling me that I did something wrong. I mean, people individually, we don't like that, right? How often do you like, negative feedback? So imagine trying to do that at a company level where everyone's like, yeah, we're being doing well. It's fantastic.
The only time a consumer wants to talk to a company is when something's wrong.
Right. And so I think that it's a, from the communication, is it sort of digital media? Is it not? It is actually, I think, more broadly just communication. Whether it's going to happen online or it's going to happen in a room like this, it doesn't really matter. But it is a tough skill. So most of the major problems in the world at some point come down to can't communicate, don't want to communicate, don't want to listen, don't want to do whatever. So, are we solving peace in the Middle East? Not this evening, but I do think that
it's the next forum.
It's the next forum. But it is. I think if you say I'm going into the communication business, and I'm trying to genuinely understand what people are trying to do, and I'm trying to facilitate, and there's always work for that. And